So what do these bands have to do with Legacy?
Next on Eternal Durdles.
Extreme thank you to all the Durdlemaniacs that support the show. If you want to get ad-free content and extra free content, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and support us. Proceeds go to editing the show, upgrading equipment, and helping us travel to events. What it do? Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me this week we have a special guest, Joey Pasco from MTG Taps. Joey, how are you, man?
I'm great. How are you, Zach?
I'm doing good. I wanted to bring you on because you're in the know a little bit more than I think Phil is about Commander. I play Commander pretty often. I've been known to even throw down a CEDH game every now and again. But I wanted to get some reactions, about the Commander ban, about the RC, and in the context of how this relates to what I think a lot of Legacy players have felt over the last, I guess, 2 years. So just to give everyone some context, our Legacy players. There were some bans in an EDH. If you haven't been on Twitter for the last 2 days, they banned a bunch of fast mana cards and Nadu. So these cards were particularly expensive. Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, which is only playable in Commander,
Right.
Dockside Extortionist, and Nadu all got banned from EDH, which I personally feel like was a big hey, CEDH kids, stop coming to the casual tables. So my hot take here is that I don't like it. The ban doesn't sit well with me. But let me just ask you, how do you feel about the bans?
I don't like it either.
Yeah.
I'm not happy. As far as EDH goes, I've only been into it for just over a year. I think last summer. It's one of those things that it didn't really interest me for whatever reason, and I was
casuals.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the perception from my background is just basically 60 card constructed formats. So I standard, even block constructed back in the day, and then modern, and I got into Legacy, and so those were the formats that I liked a lot. Then eventually Pioneer comes out, so that's the perspective I had in terms of what I was coming from. And EDH seemed like something where some people get together and have fun and play cards that don't see play in 60 card constructed formats.
Yeah,
exactly. That was my perception of it. And then you'd hear things about Commander players complaining about things like counter spells. Oh, you play a counter spell, you're not welcome at my table. And I'm like, what is this? This doesn't sound appealing to me.
Yeah.
But eventually, I guess it's one of those things that sort of the idea started appealing to me more as some of the 60 card constructed formats started appealing to me less.
Yeah.
And BANS and Horizon sets had a lot to do with that.
Yeah. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield. Moxfield is the best Magic the Gathering deck building website on the internet. You can create, share, and find decks from Commander to Legacy and even fan-supported formats like Pre-Modern and Old School. You can see all of our decks on our Moxfield. Follow the links below to stay tuned. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that sort of pushed me into the realm of playing EDH was, the pandemic obviously helped because then you could hang out with 4 of your friends instead of just 1. But the death of Grand Prix, I think, killed a lot of the 60 card formats because then you weren't going to the local every week to grind buys, you know, and then you get to a point where you're just like, well, how do I even take, I keep buying out of habit. I keep buying boxes of cards, right? And there's another EDH card. I have a card catalog literal card catalog here
awesome.
of Magic cards that I just keep and hold on to, and buy high, never sell, right?
Right.
And so you just end up with the ability to make decks, and brewing is fun. So that was kind of my takeaway, and you could hang out with your friends and you hang out with your friends and not necessarily make it about Magic, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so that was what happened. It was sort of like, hey, I'm going to play with my best friend who I started playing Magic with back in 1995, and we're going to play with some other players that we've known for, over a decade, and just kind of get together, and we don't care. It doesn't matter. It's not like testing for something, and it's just fun. But I guess the other thing is coming from that background, I'm a spike. Like I
Yeah.
want to win. Like I want to play powerful cards. And so our group, I wouldn't call us CEDH by any means. We're not to that degree, but I'm playing Dockside and Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt in my decks. Like I play powerful cards. And so this, as far as the bans go, like they hit me
Yeah.
pretty hard. And part of it is like, where else am I going to play these powerful cards?
Exactly.
I don't play Vintage. I mean, if that's the answer, then I guess that's the answer. But that was one of the things that I was talking to friends about how Commander actually surprised me and excited me, was because like, hey, I can play really powerful things. It's not a format of people playing terrible cards. There are actually really good cards in this format, and that I don't get to play anywhere else. So I want to play the powerful cards, but I still want, like, our group is not like meant to be CEDH. So I would look at CEDH decks and kind of get ideas from them. So sure, I'm playing I'm playing some stuff that's high power level, but I would also make sure to try to turn it down from there and like, okay, I'm not going to include this. That doesn't seem that fun. And things like that. I was always trying to scale it back from what I saw in CEDH decks. So I feel like, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here on terms of the topics, but for me, Commander is not casual versus competitive. Commander is kind of a spectrum, and this ban seems like it was for more casual players, but you really hit a lot of people on the spectrum like kind of a splash damage, and I don't like it at all.
Yeah. So my background was I played with two of the guys that I grew up with, in the 90s, like playing in the I call it the Moxfield basement. Like the guy who created Moxfield, we grew up with him.
Awesome.
We used to go to his dad's and mom's place, play in the basement until like 4 a.m. and then his dad would like come down like 4 a.m. and be like, "Okay, guys, you got to go to sleep." And we're like, yeah, whatever,
Sure.
like, and then we'd wake up at like 11 on Sunday and like go to the local shop that I ended up working at.
Right.
But we had an evolution over time of like what EDH kind of meant to us, and one of the things that Harry had this philosophy about how he liked to build EDH decks, and we kind of just glommed onto that, where it was like no infinite combos, nothing egregious. Stacks isn't that fun. It's more about hang out as a group. Like we get together so infrequently in real life. When we get together and hang out, we want to have a good time, but also we want everyone to actually get to play the game too. So early on, we determined, okay, like there's a couple of ground rules here, like the infinite combos thing and stuff like that. It is fine, but like deterministically ending the game was a very important thing to us, and not taking a bajillion turns. So the Nadu thing, not taking a bajillion game actions, right?
Right.
The Nadu things make sense to me. Like I had an Estrid deck that like was really cool and it would do a lot of stuff, but like every upkeep was like 27 triggers.
Yeah.
And that's just like that's not fun for the other people in the game. The deck was good, and it wasn't like broken. It was just annoying because like my turns take 27 minutes.
Yeah.
But we got to a point where we soft banned cards, and we soft banned Soul Ring, we soft banned Dockside, we soft banned any positive mana rock. So Vault, Crypt, that sort of stuff, so that we could create a more diverse and more baseline, like more leveled out power level throughout the our meta. And to me, what the ban announcement shows me is that the people who made that decision, and I'm just going to group them all together. I know that this wasn't a unanimous decision, and everyone had different opinions and everything, but I'm just going to group them all together for this statement. The people that are in this group that made this decision are not touching grass. They're not playing with their friends. They're going to the local where some pub stomper rolls in with his like CEDH deck and is just like, haha, I went off on turn 1 or whatever. It made everyone's life miserable. And they're like, you know what? We got to stop that guy from ruining it for everybody. But he's only that guy at your local, like the people in playgroups that play and like, my playgroup's already been like, hey, if you want to play with those cards, we don't care. Like just don't be, we'll let you know if they're egregious. Like we'll have a discussion about that,
Yeah.
But then you can't take those decks like and go like, I can't take my no Soul Ring decks, right, and go to like Vegas and hope to do well against the people that don't have that haven't made that decision, right? So I have to have ways around that, and I think that's the thing. Like they're trying to protect people at these big events, but that's such a small, minute amount of people that play. But then you have, and it's not half the format, right? Like the EDH is basically like a Venn diagram of like, here's kitchen table. Magic is like almost everyone that plays Magic.
Right.
And then you have like, here's EDH, right? Just this little tiny section here. But then inside of EDH, you have a little tiny section that's CEDH. But like, that's a whole different community. And it's kind of why I'm pushing, and I'm thinking like, it's going to happen within like, I think the next 1 or 2 years, there's going to be a split, like a legitimate split. And I think people have been looking for that split for a very long time. Because, the Rule Zero conversation is always been kind of a farce, because you're never going to have that in an LGS to any satisfactory, because no one can just grab their, oh, okay, yeah, we're gonna have this Rule Zero conversation. Well, let me take those cards out of my deck, and I'll never play them again. That kind of thing. It's just, these are the 3 decks I came with. That's and that's how it kind of always is. And if I even do that, like I go to these events, it's like I have my PDH, my Pauper Commander. I have my Angie Falconwrath CEDH deck that is not good, but it just exists, right? And then I have like 2 or 3 casual commander decks that are like of varying power level. They're all a 7, that are fine for a casual like hangout thing. But I really feel like they missed the mark on this, because like you said, the splash damage was just so gigantic. Like, you took an entire community, the growing community too. Like, this is not like, oh, they've alienated the pre-modern and old school players. Like, this is a growing Magic the Gathering community of people that are excited about CEDH.
Yeah.
And they were just like, hey, the financial investment that you put into your thing for now, until someone announces that they're going to create a new format, for now is absolutely worthless,
right?
And that's a super feel bad.
Absolutely. And I think that's another part. I know a lot of people are talking about like the financial aspect, and have their various opinions about it, but I paid for my cards to play them, right?
Yeah.
So I want to play them. Of course I wouldn't want to see the value tank on Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus, but I'd prefer that and still be able to play them than the alternative, which, so it's, I would rather be able to play my cards than worry about what their value is. Like, I want to play with them. I am upset that I put money into the game and can't use these. It's like you buying tickets to Disney World, and you get there and they're like, the park's closed, and you're like, well, then I want my money back. And
it's almost like,
no, you don't get your money back.
What every Legacy player is feeling right now with Eternal Weekend, where they're like, it might be that weekend, but they haven't announced it yet. And everyone's like, what do you mean it might be that weekend? Like, I bought a hotel room, I've got a flight, like, what's going on? So, I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but I mean, at least they could probably change their flights and dates with the hotel room. You can't do anything with your Jeweled Lotus.
I honestly don't think that they can change like, it takes so long to book a convention center ahead of time. So I think it's got to be those dates. But like, it's just like, come on, are you serious right now?
But that's what I mean. Like, nobody would think that it was weird that if you bought tickets to Disney World and then you got there and the park was closed and they wouldn't give you your money back. Like, nobody would be like, it's weird that you're upset about that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm upset. Like, I put my money in, I bought my tickets. It was called a Jeweled Lotus and a Mana Crypt, and it cost a lot of money. And now I want to play with them, and you're saying I can't. And I'm like, all right, well, then I guess I want to return these for the money I spent. I can get that back, right? No. Why is it weird that's a way people are feeling? And I only own one of each, so and Dockside as well.
Yeah, I own one Dockside. Luckily, like I sold out of my vintage deck when I moved to Philadelphia, so I don't even have all my Mana Crypts are proxied Mana Crypts.
Yeah.
So my financial hit here is very low.
Right.
And I think for what it's worth, I think Mana Crypt will continue to be an expensive card because it is like a staple of almost every deck in vintage. Like, so I don't think that's a card I think that's a card that even if it dips for a minute, it'll go back up. And I don't think people should sell their Jeweled Lotuses either, because I think what'll happen, it'll be like Lion's Eye Diamond, where Lion's Eye Diamond was like a $5 card for like 20 years. And then someone was like, oh, like Flashback. Okay, cool. you know. So I think it would be silly to get rid or to rip those cards up, or you know, like you know, I think in time you're going to see that they're going to be legal in a format that doesn't exist right now.
Right. I think so too. And so I think, like, to be clear, I know we've kind of been blanket statement, like, we don't like the bans, but I'm fine with Nadu being banned.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if I had opened Twitter and seen that Dockside and Nadu were banned, I would have been surprised. I would have been basically okay with it. You're like, yeah, Dockside's been in the conversation for a while, so no surprises, and I'd have been okay with that. But the thing that hurts, the thing that I just strongly disagree with, is the artifacts, Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, blindsiding everyone. And again, these are the kind of cards I was excited about to play in Commander. So it's not, you know, I've never played a Mana Crypt before. I never played Vintage, so like this is my opportunity to play this card, and it's very exciting. And now I can't play it.
Part of the RC's challenge here was managing. They're managing two formats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have the resources to do that because there's a philosophy for each of these formats, right? Like CEDH has a philosophy, which is why it is and should be a different format, right? And then EDH has a philosophy, and those two things are not congruent with each other,
right?
And so when they're making decisions for both of those formats together,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. I think this probably is a win in the long term for the casual crowd. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said, I don't. My playgroup doesn't even play those cards. We like pre-banned them from our thing, and at the same time, we were like, as soon as that happened, we were like, hey, anyone in the group, like, if you did buy those, like, this is a place where we'll allow you to play them. You know, like, we don't really play those in our thing, but like, if you have one, like, you're not going to get financially punished for that, right? And it allows us to, like, you know, we had some caveats to that. Like, if you're a green deck, you definitely couldn't play any positive mana rocks because you can ramp, right?
Just too much,
like,
yeah.
But if you were like a black-red deck or something, or like a blue-red deck, you know, and you weren't playing like rituals and stuff like that, mm-hmm. then you can play positive mana rocks. Like, you have like that to kind of get into the game as well.
Yeah.
So we had, you know, there were, you know, every playgroup's rules are going to be a little bit different than everybody else's. But I think so. Taking this and making it, like, connecting this to Legacy is kind of where I want to go next. And I think, you know, I said this in a tweet, and it was a little like, my initial reaction to this was like the Nelson Muntz laugh, you know, at first, because I was just like, now you EDH players know what it feels like to have your format completely mismanaged. Mm-hmm. You know, like, this is welcome to Legacy, you know?
Right.
Because that's how every Legacy player has felt that way for at least the last year, if not longer. That, you know, Wizards eventually gets it right, but eventually getting it right is not good enough anymore. Like, we need a dynamic format that has to be updated on time, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're like, oh, we're just gonna leave everyone for the full summer in this shitty zone of, like, you have to, like, grief is just gonna continue happening, you know, when, like, I interviewed 25 people in the space right before the last ban, mm-hmm. and I was like, what card would you get rid of? There was not one person that didn't say grief.
I listened to that, right? Everyone was like, well, obviously grief.
Yeah, they're like, grief, and then they'd say other things. There was one person who implied it. I think they just forgot to mention grief because it was just implicit.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
You know, but that was it. And so, you know, my biggest stance here is that the people, you know, going back to the whole RC and even the people at WOTC that, like, you know, have that determination on Legacy, they're not touching grass. They're not in the weeds playing the format with other people. They go to events. They go to these big events, you know, or they have some stuff for their podcast or whatever, and they do that. And everyone, you know, but they don't have, like, a play group that they play with weekly. I feel like, you know, say what you want about those big channels. They do a great job of selling the cards and stuff like that. But I don't feel like they're in there, like, living the game, like the people who play the game on, like, a daily, regular basis, you know, or they meet up with their friends once a week. And I also don't think that they live in that experience, you know, like, because they have the ability to be like, oh, like, I just make Magic part of my life and livelihood, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go into your entire life with that privilege of that, I have Magic whenever I want it, you can make these cavalier choices that we'll ruin a format for 6 months, or because like every Monday that I got to hang out with my friends and play Legacy was like the best day of the week for me, and it was
Right.
the only reprieve from a very shitty job, at the time. So uh if they don't have that, they have most of these people have a pretty nice life where they don't have a shitty job because they're like they're full-time content creators, or they do like what they do, right?
Yeah.
So you take that thing and you say, hey, like, I'm not really thinking about the ways that this affects other people, or and I'm not gonna say they're like out there mentally screwing with people or anything like that, but like you gotta think beyond how this affects people's wallets and how this affects the culture of the format, right? You got to think about how it affects other people too, and I think they did a real piss poor job of that, and for what it's worth, WOTC has been doing a piss poor job of that for quite some time. And I really think that that's something that they need to focus on a little bit more, is figuring out a better balance of talking about how they deal with bans.
Yeah, I think the key here is that Commander started as a certain kind of thing, but that is not what it is now. And it is much more of a spectrum. And if you're making decisions that are going to affect the entire, it's not possible to make decisions that are going to serve that entire spectrum. You've got people who are like, I don't want counterspells. I had a guy come up, I had a shirt on that said nope on it, and he recognized it. He's like, you wouldn't be allowed at my table. I'm like, thanks for that random.
Yes, I don't. No one asked. No one asked, guy.
Exactly. But like, there are people that don't want to play against counterspells, and that's fine. But you don't make the ban list around them, right? Like, you don't do that. And then
I gotta be honest with the ban list. It's wild to me that there is one.
I agree. I don't think there should be a ban list at all.
This casual format has a ban list.
Right. I think I agree that if they want to have cards that, I mean, you wouldn't want to use the term ban list, I guess, but my thought would be some sort of like tier list where you say, okay, these are cards that we suggest you leave out, in kind of like levels where it's like, okay, sure, Lotus and Mox, kind of thing, Power 9 stuff. Yeah, maybe you don't want to include those. And then there's a next tier that might eliminate things like Dockside and Mana Crypt and things like that. So you sort of work your way down. And
it's wild that like Dockside and Jeweled Lotus are banned, but so is Coalition Victory. It's just like, what are you guys doing? Like it would have been even somewhat defensible if they had come and been like, look, we're going to get rid of some of these cards on the ban list that have been there because the guy who created this format put them on there and we respected him. So we didn't want to change it, but now that he has passed away, like, we think that some of these cards can come off, and they're not necessary to be there anymore. We're not to say anything bad about him. I think he's a great guy. But we moved on.
They can have a version of the format that does follow those lists.
Yeah, like, the game has moved on.
Imagine if you had a format where people were like, I really really like 2007 era fairies, standard fairies, right? And another person is like, I really like current 2024 like Boros Energy, and somebody else is like, well, I want to play Legacy Delver, and you had them all at the same table. Like, that wouldn't work. No. That's why we have different formats.
That is why.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why we have to split them out. There's standard for, standard cards are in standard for a reason, to limit things. And if your heart is set on playing a current standard deck, you wouldn't take it to a Legacy tournament. Just the same way that, you wouldn't want somebody playing Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus at the table with the guy who doesn't like counterspells. Like, so that's why they're different formats. Like, you split them up. Legacy is different than standard.
One of the things I was talking with people about at LobsterCon was like, we should get a pre-modern EDH tournament going. It's like a side event kind of thing. And like, yeah, that's a different power level altogether. Like you get like, I have an old school commander deck that is literally Chromium. It's Elder Dragon Highlander. Like,
that's awesome.
It's just like 93, 94, 90. I think 94 is where it stops. I might have Fallen Empires cards in there.
Was that still 94 or was that early 95?
That was technically 94, yeah. 95 was like Ice
Homelands and Ice Age, yeah.
So my thing was like, these are going to be different. These are different formats. And I think that you should start thinking about, as players, like, okay, like, here's my, and it sucks because like it was sort of a one size fits all format. You could show up with just your one deck, and like be able to jam it. But like now we do things like my play group will be like, okay, everyone buy a precon,
Yeah.
and we'll just be like, lower the power level. Like we have to do that every now and again. We just have to be like, okay, like the arms race has gotten out of control.
Right.
Let's lower the power level again. And we always find a way. Okay, cool. Now that everyone's got new commanders, like build them as you would, like, we always come up with like these cool decks. We're like, no one's winning on like turn 1 or 2, but like, we have these like arms races slowly over time. It builds back up, and we're like, okay, well, like, what are we going to do this way to change it up? And that's the thing about having like a play group that I just don't feel like the people on the RC like have a like traditional play group of like bros that they hang out with, that like they have a couple of beers, they play the game, and it's their like one time that they get to do this a week,
Yeah, I don't know like what their playing arrangements are, but I do feel like this the ban list is almost meant to serve when you're playing against strangers, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's sort of like, but it's only really serving that group.
It's that it protects from only that.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think, sure, could I make an argument, with my play group and say, hey, like I still want to play these cards. Are you guys cool with it? And they might say, yeah, but I do feel like it's more awkward for me to say.
It's way more awkward.
Like, you guys cool with me playing banned cards? Than it would be for a group to just say, hey, look, we don't play mana positive rocks, right? Like, that kind of thing, or we don't play counter spells, or whatever it is you want to say at your group. Like, hey, I feel like it's more awkward to ask to play banned cards. Now, opinions differ. I've seen other people saying the exact opposite. So, I don't know. I know for me, I would be much more comfortable asking people or telling people like, this is where we kind of stop. These are the kind of cards we don't play. Than asking my group like, can I play banned cards? Because they're just going to be like, they probably laugh thinking I'm joking. Are you guys cool with me playing banned cards? Especially because we've all played a lot of 60 card formats. You wouldn't show up to a modern play and maybe like, you guys cool with me playing Euro? You guys cool with that, right? So it's kind of an awkward thing, but I really just have arrived at the conclusion that things need to be split somehow. I don't know if it needs to be suggested tiers of bans like I suggested earlier, like or if it needs to just be split into 2 where you say casual and CDH, but I think there are more levels in between there.
Honestly,
too. So
the idea of it being like, like traditional format centric, where it's like Pioneer Commander, Modern Commander, Legacy Commander, that sounds actually kind of intriguing. I don't know if that would be a lot to shake up.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be interesting. Like, Magic's already got 1,000 different ways to build decks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it would be an interesting shakeup to see how that worked out. It just comes down to having an EDH deck and having a CEDH deck. Easy, you can bring your one and your other and show up to an event, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the problem of being like, I'm the guy with the rolling suitcase that has like, one deck of every format. I used to love to do that when I'd go to like a Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, I'm going to bring my standard deck, my legacy deck, my modern deck, and maybe I'll bring a backup deck as well, And after a while, you get to a point where you're like, I just like, we had to split the podcast in half because I just got a new bag, right, for my camera. Because I went this weekend. Where's that? I'm going to grab it real fast. I took this bag to the Lobster Con.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great bag. This is a Manfrotto bag, and I stuck my decks in here and my camera equipment and everything. Great. But you got it on your back, right? And it's on your back, and you have to take it off, and you're in a crowded area. It's a whole debacle, like, and I just wanted an easy, something that I could put a couple of decks into, my camera equipment, everything, and boom, I'm leaving with 2 decks for the convention today. Here you go. 1, 2, I'm good, right? And it's very hard to be like, hey, I'm gonna bring my modern and legacy and Pioneer Commander decks, and then my modern legacy and Pioneer 60 card decks as well. You get to a point where you're just like, how do you even, you just don't have enough room. It's almost better if Magic just becomes like this kind of AR digital thing at that point,
right,
where you don't have to carry around so much stuff. Everyone just wears VR glasses and
right. That's the next version of Arena.
Oh, God forbid it would be that's the death of Magic.
Yeah.
These bands, not even close.
No, not at all.
Every time someone's like, that's going to be the death of Magic, it's like, come on. The biggest thing I saw was like some dude who, like, I think it was one of the guys who got caught like doing Russian sponsored propaganda. It was like, this is gonna ruin Magic. I was like, well, knowing that guy does like is like an MTG finance guy means like this was maybe objectively the right move, you know?
Right.
But you know, like that's the other thing that sucks is like the vendors get hit with this too.
Yeah.
And that only drives up the prices of cards I actually want, you know, because they're gonna find, you know, they're all infinitely clever and can find ways to manipulate the market here and there to make up their losses, and suddenly, you know, Metamorphosis Fanatic is a $70 card, and you can't get the pre-con, you know, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I think these bans hurt a lot of people, and I think instead they should have maybe they should have made an announcement that like, hey, this is what we were considering doing, but I mean that's a strange thing to do to involve the community. They
tried that for pre-modern and it just felt stupid. It was like just ban these cards. They were like, these are on the watch list. It's like so you're banning them in 2 months.
Right. It's weird because like people want to point back to like Jeweled Lotus, like before it was released, where it was like, we're looking at this card, right? So of course we all knew it was going to be banned, right? Like, no, because we never heard anything about it for 4 years. Nobody said anything about it. So there's like an implicit, you don't say, here's this card, we're looking at it, we'll let you know if it's a problem.
And I did a spit take like when I saw that they got rid of Jeweled Lotus, because I was just like, that's the one card that like I didn't think that you would touch.
Well, it's weird to say
your format's thing, you know.
Well, that's a whole other thing where it's kind of like you're using these cards to sell packs. Like, how many people are buying packs specifically trying to open one of the versions of Mana Crypt in Lost Caverns of Ixalan?
Yeah.
You know, how many people are buying? So you're using these cards to sell. And I know it's not the same group, but I mean, the RC is endorsed by Wizards. You know, you let them manage this format, so you can't really, you know, untie them from each other. So. But, you know, saying like Jeweled Lotus might be an issue, we'll let you know if it is, and then not saying anything, at some point, I know that it's nebulous, but I think at some point when you're like a year later, they haven't said anything, so I'm going to assume that they're okay.
Yeah, everything's fine.
4 years later?
It's also like...
it's fine.
It's not like there's a cadence here, you know, like we as Legacy players, we can expect a cadence that like, okay, when things get out of hand, like, okay, there's a ban announcement coming up. We know that these cards are on the line. You know, like I can set my watch to the like, how's the format feel? What cards need to go? Can we unban anything? You know, like we have those episodes every like 6 months to a quarter to talk about like, oh, how are we feeling about the format, right? This came out of nowhere. This wasn't like a scheduled thing, you know.
I think they have a quarterly update, but usually because they don't ban anything, I don't ever look at it, you know. So
it doesn't happen with the ban announcement, you know, like it's a completely separate thing, you know.
I think at the last quarterly update they were talking about something about the silver bordered cards, but I was kind of like, whatever, I don't play with those anyway. But again, some groups do. That's fine. If they care about it, they care about it. But that's not for me, and it's not relevant to me, so I didn't read it. But I do. They have these quarterly updates, and I guess this one just was like, hey, welcome to the quarterly blog. These cards are banned and moving on. So you know.
Yeah, it's funny that, you know, when I look at this, the other thing that I was taking away from this as a Legacy player, I'm a big proponent of, like, Legacy eventually, because Wizards doesn't care about Legacy as a format, right? We've established that several times over the last year.
Can't. That's the thing is, like, I think Wizards would like to care, but they've got the reserved list, and that's basically made it so that they can't care as much as they probably would like to.
So my dream one day is that we have our own governing body that's community ran, and this is a huge strike against that idea. Like having people that are in your community that get to make these decisions. This is a net loss for that thing, you know, like, and I know Alex Ullman of the Popper panel and stuff like that. He catches shit every now and again from people for like the Gush ban and the Days ban. Is like the Popper panel didn't even exist then, dude. Like, you know, and like, you know, you can look at Pre-Modern, who's doing a pretty solid job of that sort of thing and taking a very measured approach. You know, they had a ban last year of land tax, I believe.
It was land tax.
Yeah, and so that stopped like a very like just an oppressively boring deck to play against that also like just outcarded people. And that stopped that from ruining the format. You know, when decks are ruining the format, take action, right? I can't think of a single deck that was ruining EDH with these cards, you know,
especially not EDH as a whole, right?
Yeah.
You might be able to have a CEDH player say like, I think Rogsai is ruining the format. Well, this didn't help there because I don't think Rogsai uses these cards.
This read to me as like the guy at the local goes in and pub stomps me every week. Please do something about it. And they just like kept getting these letters, and they were like, well, it can't be the same guy, right? Like, and they were like, I guess we'll just help this poor bastard out and like ban these cards, right? Like, that's how that felt to me, is like, I lost this card, somebody hurt me, you know, ban these cards. And that's kind of, even in reading the, you know, the reaction to Sol Ring as like, oh, we're going to keep Sol Ring in because it's iconic. Like, no one in their right mind is like, oh, Sol Ring is the reason why I play this format, you know? And no one loses any money. If you'd have gotten rid of Sol Ring instead of Mana Crypt, you know, people would have been like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, at least they got rid of Sol Ring.
I'd have been upset about that too, because again, I'm not playing Sol Ring anywhere else, but
yeah, true,
it is to me a nostalgic
I have
card,
a nice French like black border Sol Ring from,
I have
like,
an Italian one, same deal. Like, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, the difference is there's people who like different things, and they're all within the same format, and so you can't have someone bringing 24 era standard and trying to play at the same table as someone playing you know, Legacy, because they're different formats. And that is the same kind of thing happening within EDH. You've got different kinds of decks, and you've got how many different iterations of a format at every kitchen table play group. You know, you've got the no counterspell table, and you've got the CEDH table, you know, kitchen table as well, because I'm not playing in any CEDH tournaments. I don't intend to. I just want to play with my friends, but I want to play powerful cards.
You want to play your cards,
and I think it's awkward for me to just be like, you know, can I play with banned cards at the table? I think it's just gonna, I mean, I'm sure they would let me. I don't really think it would be a big deal, but I still feel, I just think you've taken away part of the format that people enjoy, and for not a really great reason. I just think they need to sort of do some sort of split.
Yeah. Now to you know, as we wind down here, just to counter your point here, because I did lose to a guy who accidentally brought a standard deck to a Legacy tournament, and let me tell you, Rug Delver had a real problem with Whisperwood Elemental manifesting a creature every turn. I just couldn't, like, my Tarmogoyf could not get past it, you know?
That's awesome.
So it can happen,
sure.
But it's unlikely. Man, I really wish I had a Daze when he just like tapped 5 mana and played a Whisperwood Elemental. I was like, man, my life is ruined right now.
That's awesome.
But yeah, to that end, Joey, again, thanks for coming on. Yeah, I know this was super last minute, but I feel like this was something that, like, I kind of wanted. One, I just kind of wanted to get off my chest, but I think it does have implications to the Legacy community as well. And it's just an interesting, fun conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for inviting me. I definitely didn't expect to get the invite, so it's always fun to chat about Magic, whatever format we happen to be talking about, and I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah. All right, well, everyone, thanks for watching. Hit the buttons, all that stuff, and we will catch you next time. Later on.
See ya.
Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the Legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/EternalDurdles. Thanks so much for watching.